Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Thomas and I'll be reading the quarter 3 test to you. I'll be reading the question and the answer options. There's a total of 23 questions in the test, and when you're done, please make sure to click the submit quiz button so that the quiz goes accurately into the gradebook, and then make sure to open up your gradebook when you're done and check that there is a score there. It should be automatically graded for you. Question number 1, which of the following includes characteristics of capitalism? Freedom of competition, market economy, supply and demand, limited competition, government-run economy, no competition, subsistence economy, supply and demand. Question number 2, why were monopolies considered a social problem that progressives like the muckrakers felt needed to be limited or stopped? They created unsanitary and unsafe conditions in the cities. They limited business competition and consumer choice and made only a few extremely wealthy. They were considered a communist threat. Question number 3, multiple select. Select 3 ways new inventions impacted American life in the early 1800s. They made life more convenient. They made life more productive. They made life more expensive. They made some businesses more profitable. Question 4. Unions used strikes and negotiations to change working conditions for workers. Which of the following was not the result of their efforts? That should say negotiations. That looks like a typo right there, so just make sure you know that's negotiations. Better pay, guaranteed medical benefits, improved working conditions. Number 5, multiple select. Choose 3 pull factors listed below that attracted immigrants to the United States from European and Asian nations in the late 1800s. A large number of factory jobs, cheap land, political tolerance of religious minorities, unemployment in their homelands. Question number 6. Which of the following statements explains the political cartoon message about immigration in the 1920s? Governmental laws supported by nativists limited the number of immigrants coming into the U.S. There was not enough room on boats to get all the people who wanted to come to the U.S. from Europe, and the government tried to help. 3% of nativists were trying to leave the U.S. to immigrate to other countries. Number 7. Select all 3 of the following political reforms that resulted from the progressive movement: direct election of senators, initiative and referendum measures, presidential impeachment process, the recall elections. 8. Which of the following scenarios would have been legal or permitted after the ruling of the Supreme Court case Plessy versus Ferguson? A mob lynching a black man who was dating a white woman, blacks having separate drinking fountains and bathrooms in hospitals, blacks not being permitted to vote in local elections. Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey all had different philosophies on how to approach obtaining rights for African Americans. Match the African American activists with their approach to bring about change. You have to match the description to the number. The numbers are Booker T. Washington for 1, 2 W.E.B. Du Bois, and 3 Marcus Garvey. Desired change immediately, and the focus should be on highly educated African Americans who would lead other African Americans to equality. The second definition or statement is that they believed that reconciliation with whites was impossible and that African Americans should create their own communities and businesses. And then the third description of the third person would be believed that it would take time to achieve equality, and in the meantime, African Americans needed access to job training, good jobs, and a chance at self-improvement. Question number 10. The women's suffrage movement in the U.S. fought for 72 years. Why did women want to be given the right to vote? The country was failing without women's support. The U.S. was the only country that did not give women the right to vote. Women wanted to break free of their domestic sphere and enter the public sphere to have more say in laws that impacted their daily lives. Question 11. Match each description below as being either a reason to support or oppose the U.S. practicing imperialism. Number 1's option is support imperialism. Number 2 is opposes imperialism. The first one to match would be need for new markets and new raw materials. Fear of increase in immigrants, violated the Constitution, and the last one is desire to become a world power. Number 12, at the end of the Spanish-American War, which was not one of the terms agreed to in the Treaty of Paris, Puerto Rico and Guam became territories of the U.S., Cuba remained a territory of Spain, Cuba gained its independence from Spain. Question 13, match each president with the correct description of their foreign policy. The options are President Theodore Roosevelt, President Taft, and President Wilson. First description, the U.S. should use foreign policy to bring about peace and promote democracy. Second description, impact foreign policy through business deals rather than with the military. Third description, support using the U.S. military to impact foreign policy. Question 14, multiple select. Which two of the following options are ways that the American government tried to change public opinion of the war and limit opposition to American involvement? Passing the Sedition and Espionage Acts, creating propaganda through the Committee on Public Information, establishing an agency to investigate Americans who spoke in support of the war, forced Americans to take a loyalty oath. Select the 3 ways in which women's roles changed after World War I. Women were more accepted in the workplace and more job opportunities opened up for them. Women gained independence and were able to support themselves financially. Women became doctors in much larger numbers. Women began to dress differently and participated in activities that had typically been reserved for men, such as going to clubs. Number 16, which of the following is an impact of the Age of Prosperity in the 1920s? There was a development of the teenager age group because young adults did not have to work to support their families and were encouraged to stay in school longer. Industries were so successful that there was no unemployment. The government used propaganda to convince people to work less and enjoy their free time. Question number 17, fill in the blank with the correct term. The blank was a golden age for African American artists, writers, and musicians. It gave these artists pride and control over how the Black experience was represented in American culture and set the stage for civil rights movement. Harlem Revival, the Great Migration, the Harlem Renaissance. Question 18, match the following problems that existed in the 1920s with the correct description. The options are Prohibition, Red Scare, or KKK. The descriptions or definitions are the legal prevention of the manufacture, sale, and transport of alcoholic beverages in the United States from 1920 to 1933, anti-communism fear and suspicions of communists and other radicals, a reactionary organization whose members support prejudice against Blacks, immigrants, Jews, and Catholics, sometimes through violent measures. 19. Which was a weakness in the economy and one of the causes of the Great Depression? Failure to collect income taxes, risky banking practices, or problems with home mortgages? Question 20. Which of the following is not a way the Great Depression impacted ordinary Americans? People lost their savings due to bank failures. Families had little money to buy what they needed. The government provided immediate relief through stimulus checks. Number 21, what was referred to as the first 100 days? The period of time when Congress and President Roosevelt created the first set of New Deal programs, the number of days it took for the banks to recover from the Depression, or the first 100 days after the stock market crashed when the Depression was the worst. Question number 22, what was the purpose of FDR's New Deal? To increase taxes on rich Americans through socialism, to move the country away from capitalism and towards communism, to provide aid, jobs, and economic relief to the poor. Question number 23, what were the major criticisms of the New Deal? It created a socialist party, which upset the existing two-party political system. Some people said the legislation had not gone far enough, and others thought it created too much government. FDR did not act quickly enough in response to the crisis. When you are done, click Submit Quiz so that it goes correctly into the gradebook. Then, once you have exited it out after you submitted the quiz, make sure you go into your gradebook to check that it recorded properly.